Thank you very much, Rob. That was a wonderful speech. Went right into my European heart. And I think you show that D66 has the most European leader on the whole continent. Move over, Emmanuel. And I would also like to thank you because you're our new party leader. And I would also like to thank you for the way that you have really put climate action, but also our progressive values at the heart, right back at the heart of the political agenda. And you have also shown that politics is not just about taking position, but also about being constructive and cooperative, working together with others to make things happen. So thank you very much for that. And I also think that that is, let's say, the D66 way, the liberal way, the European way. And I believe that the time has come to lift that to the European level. And I would like to start with an anecdote. And now I can feel a few people in the audience getting really nervous, saying, oh my God, that's not in her speaking notes. She's going to say something else. Calm down. I'm coming back to my speaking notes. So, dear friends, I was thinking of the negotiations between the European Union and the United Kingdom in recent weeks that are going very, very slowly. And the UK Parliament has just rejected the agreement that had been negotiated between the EU and Mrs. May. And they rejected it mainly because they said, well, there's this idea of the backstop in there. I think most people here are familiar with that. And they said, it's not really about Northern Ireland, is it? It is a devious, evil plot from Europe. It's meant to keep us inside the European Union forever. We know that. They don't say it, but it's true. And they really believe that. And I thought to myself, that's silly. They assume that the European Union is capable of such very smart conspiracies and strategies. No, it's not. That's just not the way the European Union works. And of course, I was giggling about it too. But then in a way, it should be alarming. Because in the world of today, we do need a political union. We need a union that has a political vision and a political strategy. And that is what I would like to talk to you about today. So guys, calm down now. I'm coming back to the speaking notes. Because I think the environment is a wonderful example of what politics can achieve and also what these elections will be all about. Because the environmental issues say a great deal about how we see the world and the role of politics in the world. And let me give you an example of how we can really achieve things if we get the politics right. I was recently reminded of the hole in the ozone layer. Now, I had personally forgotten all about it, but in the 1980s, when it turned out that we were destroying our environment through the use of ordinary, everyday things like fridges and hairspray, and yes, there was a lot of hairspray in the 80s. It didn't really help me very much, but we took action. We got rid of some substances and we developed others that were just as good. And we shifted our economy a bit without slowing it down. And we changed people's behavior without lowering their aspirations. Now, today, it turns out the ozone layer is steadily improving, quicker than we expected, and in about 10 years, it will be restored entirely. And not because there was no problem to begin with, nor because it went away by itself, but because we made it happen. Because everyone, governments and companies, cities and civilians, international organizations and NGOs, they all got behind that one overarching, all-important goal. And that is how you solve problems, even intractable problems. And that is how we make progress, also in politics. And therein lies the strength of an open, democratic society. And that's just one example. But it shows us what's at stake at the European elections. It's about a worldview, an idea of how the world works and how it should work and how we're going to make it work. Because all too often, the terms of the debate are set by populist and nationalist forces in and around EU politics. They don't believe in us shaping our future. They want to take us back to the past, a past which in reality never existed. You know, women in the kitchen, gays in the closet, Eastern Europeans behind the wall, and everyone in church on Sundays. A simple world. They don't believe in the power inherent in people, in free societies. They believe in disempowering people, in a world made simple, because people don't get to make their own choices about who they are, who to live, how to live, and whom to love. They don't believe in us being a force for good. In fact, if you listen carefully, they don't believe in any progress at all. Managing migration properly, that, they say, will only lead to more immigration, and nothing good can ever come of that. Tackling climate change, they see only costs, not benefits or investments, or even the necessity of change. Because for all the talk of realism, they refuse to face the reality of climate change and the challenge of preserving our natural environment. And yes, Europe is where their reactionary outlook is most obvious. The achievements of the past are taken for granted. As if peace and common markets are self-evident. As if we never had to fight for them, never had to make painful compromises, never had to go out and convince our electorates. It didn't happen all by itself. But they are against making any further progress. Things can only get worse is what they tell us. But they are wrong. The past 10 years, we've had very turbulent times in Europe. We've had a financial crisis that has ravaged our economy, destroyed jobs. We've had terrorist attacks on European soil, unprecedented migration flows, Brexit, the war in Ukraine, and of course, Trump. But Europe is still standing, as strong as ever. Okay, few scratches maybe here and there, but Europe has shown the world it can weather the storm, and that we can be proud of. And if you look at the recent past only, it's incredible how much we have achieved. We have created the best continent in the world. But what is their alternative, the populists? What do they actually achieve? Well, let's look at 3 random examples here. So, there's Trump in the White House, and he has achieved the greatest government shutdown in history. Mr. Orban has achieved the slave law in 21st century Europe. And the Brexiteers have achieved that the British are stockpiling food and medicine. The government of Great Britain, unable to ensure the most basic needs of the people. And they call that sovereignty? Every time, populists have proven themselves totally unfit for government. And every time, the most vulnerable are hit the hardest. They pay the price. And that's the real divide of this year's elections. Populists simply have no belief in the power of politics to tackle challenges, no self-belief as politicians. They claim to be realists. Well, they are the exact opposite. And what they are saying is, stop the world, I want to get off, it's going too fast. But that's not realism, that's dreaming. They are dreaming of the past, but at least we are dreaming of the future. And that future will come. And yeah, challenges will be there. But the real question is, will politics tackle them proactively? Or do we just sit back and watch the spectacle and hope for the best? No, that's not what we are in politics for. The populist worldview runs counter to everything we have achieved in recent years and decades. Individual rights and progressive values, multilateralism and European integration, strengthening democracy and the rule of law. So we progressives, we have to use our own story as the starting position, our own narrative, our own worldview, based on the faith that we have in people, in trust between people, and confidence in progressive politics, and our self-confidence as politicians. And ultimately, our belief in Europe and the power of Europeans. Now, what is our story? In short, I would say, as a liberal, I passionately believe in an open society's power to adapt and improve. As a progressive, I believe politics can make a real difference in doing so. And as a European, I know we can move mountains if we join forces. And that's my story, that's what I believe in. It's both pragmatic as well as values-based. And I also believe that these values are as strong, as relevant, and most of all, as attractive as ever. And yes, we will win this battle of ideas. And just look at the challenges ahead of us in the years to come. We see three main themes emerging. One is climate change and energy. Now, the economy will make the transition to a more sustainable, circular, greener model, simply because it will have to. The real question is, will we be in the lead, politically and technologically, so that the transition is also equitable and based on our European needs? And will the economy be driven by our values, by our consumers and our companies, as well as our technology? Or will it be too little too late? And will we end up following the models, the rules and the standards set by others? We know we need to turn away from Russian gas and Saudi oil without turning towards Chinese solar panels and technology instead. And it's happening already. Across Europe, young people are taking to the streets to demand immediate action. And across Europe, there are mayors, local governments, NGOs and companies taking the lead. They are changing the way that we produce, save and share energy. They are cutting down on the use of carbon, cars and waste. They see the need of turning green. They see the benefits and they act accordingly. So society is ready. Now it's time for our politicians to act. Lawmakers and governments have to take up the challenge. Regulation has always been one of the biggest drivers of the EU innovation and integration. And we, progressives, will be in the lead to make it happen. Second is the question of who really shapes Europe's future. Now, in recent years, we have seen that the real threat to our sovereignty, our rights, and even our democracies comes not from the EU institutions, but to the contrary, from uncontrolled and virtually uncontrollable multinational businesses, American tech giants or Chinese state-funded companies. They decide what they do with our private content. They refuse to pay into public budgets in Europe. They pick and choose from our laws and institutions what suits their interest, not ours. They decide what we see online and they literally decide on our worldview. And they certainly don't start from a European perspective. Now imagine this, we are the largest single market in the world, but only 18%, that's 18% of the largest digital platforms are located in Europe. And in terms of value, that's only 2%. 2%, we're one of the biggest economies in the world, but only 2% of digital platform industry is in European hands. I find that very worrying. Now, these companies have grown far beyond our reach as individual nations, but as a European Union, and only as a European Union, we can take back control. Yeah, that took a second, huh? Yeah. Okay, but now it's ours. We take back control. Margrethe Vestager, our own Liberal Commissioner, has shown that we can confront a massive company like Apple with its ridiculously, shamefully low tax bill. And as Gerben-Jan Gerbrandy has proven, we can hold the likes of Volkswagen accountable for breaking our environmental rules. And both Marietje Schaake and myself have led the way in recent years so that we actually oblige the Facebooks of this world to respect the rule of law also on the internet. And this will be one of the fights for the next few years. Rules and laws are slow to adapt. Companies and technology often run rings around regulators. So we need to keep up the momentum because the conservatives of the EPP have and always will protect vested interests of the old economy, like coal. And that is why we need a strong and united progressive bloc to push for change. Thirdly, I would say these elections are about something even more fundamental, and that's about the standards and values that we share as Europeans. Because many, even at the center of politics, still describe the EU at best as a sort of shotgun marriage. We don't like it any more than you do, they tell voters, but we have no choice. Now, that's not only bad marketing. I mean, why on earth would anyone vote, let alone campaign, for a totally unattractive but supposedly unavoidable political fact? Especially when Brexit has shown us that everything is reversible. Now, even worse than bad marketing, it's bad thinking, because it's simply untrue. We are a community of values, not of necessity. Core beliefs, ideals, and inspirations are what keep us together as Europeans. And we have much more in common than what divides us. From Hungarian protesters fighting against the crazy laws of Orban to the Belgian youth, the tens of thousands of Belgian young people taking to the streets for the climate. We all believe in bottom-up democracy, unity, and the fairness of the rule of law. And across Europe, people see the EU as an opportunity, a chance to get together and shape our own society, a chance for them to shape their own lives within society. They know that we are Europe, and the future is ours to make through Europe. And as progressives, we will not settle for anything less. Our brave friends from Hungary have become the symbol of this struggle, as we've heard from Katka in her speech earlier, and I'm really looking forward to sitting side by side in the European Parliament and building this Europe of values. And those young people in Hungary have been let down too often. On the one hand, on the right, by politicians who speak of democracy, but prefer backroom deals with Orban as long as it helps them lay claim to power within the EU institutions. Mr. Juncker and Mr. Weber have always protected their buddy Orban in the end because he is part of their base, and power games are more important to them than democracy and the rule of law in Hungary. But also on the left, by people who speak of values but lack the backbone to act against the Hungarian government, like Frans Timmermans, who now tells us that he wants to lead the European Commission, but for the past 5 years, he sat idly by. He talks the talk, but he doesn't walk the walk. And let me be clear, we will not give support to any candidate for the Commission presidency who will not halt the destruction of European values in Hungary and any other member state. Because the real momentum in these elections lies with the people who stand for progressive values and European Union. So to the people of Momentum, we say, we will never let you down. Now, populism will not call the shots in this campaign, nor will the parties at the political center who fail to distance themselves from those populists. They are loud, but they are not the majority. Think about it. The populists are loud, but they are not the majority. They may grab people's attention, but they don't have the answer. And the real way to voters' hearts is quite simply through unashamedly democratic and unequivocally progressive politics. Because we have the convictions necessary to reach out to people. And we also have the sense of compromise to make sure that convictions lead to actual change. And that's the essence of democratic politics. Know where you start, but also know how to find the common ground. For that is really where the voters want us to be. And I wholeheartedly agree with the words this morning of En Marche's Arthur Corbin this morning. If nationalists are able to join forces, then surely we are too. It is more important than ever to create a strong, progressive, future-oriented, pro-European group in the center. And not just after the elections. And not just in words, but also in actions. We have to make a common proposition to the voters in May. The door is open to all those who share our values, our message, our goals. And that is why I am so pleased that we are here together today with people from Momentum, from Veld, from En Marche, and so many others, and of course, plenty of D66 friends, because I think this symbolizes the cooperation that we offer to the voters in the next years. Because no party embodies the combination as well as D66 does. And we too can win this battle by being sensible, smart, and constructive. And in May, we're going to prove it. Thank you.